who ignores the past um, is someone who is not going to know what's going to happen in the future. And this was recorded for us so that we wouldn't make the same mistakes that they made. And unfortunately, well, trying to figure out how to repair your atmosphere and stuff like that sounds like we're pretty much already there, doesn't it? My life senses returned to me as if awakened from the deepest sleep by the sound of the calling of my name. I was in some kind of an enclosure. It was dark, but there was also an aura. Then my name was called again by the deepest of voices, and although I could hear it, I could not tell whence the voice came, nor could I see whoever it was that spoke. And I said, "Here I am." Oh, wait, I've already read this. Did we get our page thrown off here? Yeah, I did. Wow. I don't remember what page we left off on. Well, that stinks. Let me just scroll through the page. Bear with me for a minute. Oh, here we go. Yeah, because this is, yeah, we were way past that. Yeah, this is basically continuing on the sort of genealogical history of the ancestors of the Anunnaki who came to Earth and seeded life on Earth, and so this is uh, their historical and genealogical record here. Try to see how much of this we read. Um, it's talking essentially about how uh, we there was great cataclysms, there was nuclear weapons unleashed, and then somehow it was just interesting because after it said brother was pitted against brother, and then all of their people on their planet were wiped out. And then out of those ashes, like the phoenix out of the ashes, which is interesting because that's one of the symbols of the brotherhood, the double-headed phoenix. Um, arose these bloodlines and these kings and queens and set up the new game. And so here they're talking about the circuit of Nibiru, which is the orbit of Nibiru. A destiny it is in the orbit of Nibiru embedded. So they're saying that there's, the destiny of what's to happen on their planet and our planet is hidden in the orbit of Nibiru. And many people out there believe that this comet Elenin, which is going to pass near to Earth very soon, is actually the famed Nibiru. I don't really believe that myself, but I don't not believe it either. You know what I mean? I'm just sort of could go either way. Others of knowledge of the orbit did not consider the Nibiru's destiny to be tied with that orbit. They found that there was a breaching in their atmosphere. Volcanoes, the atmosphere were belching and spitting up. I'm sort of, as I was doing Friday night, I'm sort of kind of going over some of this stuff is in kind of a weird. It doesn't really translate well in modern day English. So I'm kind of summarizing it all for you because it just sounds dumb to read. Volcanoes, the atmosphere forbear, less belching, were spitting up. I'd rather just say there were volcanoes and shit was coming out of them, Nibiru's air has been made thinner. The protective shit lid has been diminished. I think it's supposed to say shield, but it says shit lid. Is that what they call it in ancient Sumeria? The shit lid? Yeah, get that shit lid up there, boy, before we burn to death. Ah, damn, put some duct tape and some baling wire on it. Do whatever you got to do. Keep us from burning up. I think Bill Hicks was right. We've been invaded by rednecks from another world. In the reign of Anshar and Kishar, pestilences appeared, and they could not overcome them. Their son Inshar ascended to the throne, and he was of the sixth dynasty of rule on Nibiru. His name became Master of the Shar. With great understanding, he was born. So when he was born, he was already, he already had knowledge when he was born. He was born with a great knowledge of something. With much learning, he mastered much knowledge. To remedy the afflictions in the ways he sought to remedy the afflictions of people. And he spent much time studying the orbit of Nibiru. In its looping of the sun, 5 family members embraced the planets of dazzling beauty for cures to the afflictions of their atmosphere. He examined the atmosphere. So they were finding out that people were dying on their planet, and the reason that was because of their atmosphere being depleted. To each he gave a name. Ancestral forefathers he honored. As heavenly couples he considered them. On and Onto were like twin planets. He called the first 2 that he encountered On and Onto. Beyond Nibiru's orbit were Anshar and Kishar, and they were the largest in size. As a messenger, Gaga among the others' course, sometimes first Nibiru meet. I think Gaga is Jupiter or Saturn or one of those. So there's your occultic reference in your occultic explanation behind Lady Gaga. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, that's where they came from. It's all, I mean, come on. She's Italian too. Give me a fucking break. These guys in the priest class that run the music industry and all this, they're all well aware of this stuff. I mean, every one of her videos, Lady Gaga's videos, one of her first videos, there's, Sirius in the background to the twin dogs. I mean, there's occultic stuff in every single one of those. That's not there by mistake. And it's not put there by her either. Don't confuse that. The most of the time, the guys in the A&R departments at the major record labels are the ones that are the occultists and are into this. And, they suggest, hey, you should put this in there. And they say, oh, okay, cool, whatever you want, yay. Give me some more Coke and $1 million. I'll do whatever you want. 5 in all were Nibiru's heavenly greeters as the sun it circled. Beyond, like a boundary, the hammered bracelet of the sun encircled. As a guardian of the heavens' forbidden region with havoc, it protected. Other children of the sun, 4 in number from intrusion, the bracelet shielded. The atmospheres of the great 5 greeters Inshar set out to study. So some sort of loop, which interesting because I've just had this story here tonight and already closed out of it, damn it. Let me see if I can get back to it. That's just odd that it's talking about this bracelet that came from the sun that actually protected part of their atmosphere during the time in which it came around. And I had this story here tonight, and I didn't cover it. And I was thinking, no, I'll just skip that one. Here it is. Kind of seems synchronistic now. Maybe there's a connection to this. It says, it's from the Daily Mail, discovery of magnetic ropes that cause solar storms will help prepare Earth for space weather damage. So they discovered these ropes that precede these solar flares, which should be able to help us be able to understand when these are going to happen and protect against them. And I'll put a link to that in the chat room so you can check it out on your own, but it just seems highly coincidental and seems almost very similar to what they're describing here as this. Maybe it was something about these ropes, as they're calling here in this Daily Mail article. Maybe that's what the bracelet was, shielding the planet. In its repeating orbit, the 5 in Nibiru's loop carefully were examined. The 5 planets in the same orbit as Nibiru were carefully examined. They observed what types of atmospheres that these planets possessed. And with celestial chariots, they intensely were examined. Oh, right. So they sent spaceships to examine the planets closer. That's what it is, celestial chariots. Come on. The findings were astounding, the discoveries confusing. From orbit to orbit, Nibiru's atmosphere seemed to have more breaching. In the councils of the learned, cures were avidly debated. Ways to bandage the wound were urgently considered. A new shield to embrace the planet was attempted. All that was thrust up back to the ground came down. And the councils of the learned, the belching volcanoes were studied. The atmosphere by belching volcanoes that were created by the volcanoes. God, I'm just trying to figure out a way to say this. The atmosphere by belching volcanoes had been created as wound by their diminished belching had come to be. And it just doesn't, So these volcanoes cause their atmosphere, or one of the causes of their atmosphere to be depleted. It says here that they basically figured out how to make a new invention that would utilize the volcanoes to basically solve their problem. And so they were actually trying to get the volcanoes to keep spewing, even though they wanted them to stop before. Now they were hoping that the volcanoes would start to spew again because whatever solution they come up with needed that to happen in order for it to work. In the reign of Inshar, the breach in the skies grew bigger. It didn't rain. The wind blew harder. And there was no water that came out of the ground. In the lands, there was an accusation the breasts of mothers were dry. In the palace, there was distress, and an accusation therein took hold, as first his wife, Inshar, a half-sister, did espouse by the law of the seed abiding. Ninshar, she was called, who bears the shars of the lady, a son she did not bear. By a concubine to Inshar, a son was born. The firstborn son he was. By Ninshar, first wife and half-sister, a son was not brought forth. By the law of succession, the concubine's son to the throne ascended. The seventh to reign he was. Du-Uro was his royal name, and the dwelling place fashioned its meaning. In the house of concubines, not in the palace, he was indeed conceived. So he was like, he was like the George Bush of his time, I suppose. The bastard son who ascended to power, the more like the Bill Clinton of his time, huh? Yeah. I don't know if they still know who Bill Clinton's dad was. His mom was a dirty, dirty whore. Damn, man. She fucked so many dudes. They didn't know who the fuck Bill's dad was. I think somebody said it was, that guy from Hee Haw. Junior Samples or some shit like that. I think somebody said Junior Samples was his dad. And somebody at Dilly Plaza told me that one time. As his spouse, a maiden from his youth beloved Duru chose. And, that's interesting. So, Duru, the bastard son who took over power, chose his wife because he loved her, not because she was in the bloodline. Uh-oh. Well, this is interesting, man. This story's starting to get thick. Now we're starting to see why, we need to learn this. This sounds very similar to the history of some of our kings and queens and power structure on earth, doesn't it? Da-Uru was her royal name. She who is by my side was the meaning. Wow, that's kind of a downgrade from, the wife before. What she was like, the one who does something in the sky. This is like, the bitch who stands by my side all the time. Wow, that's just beautiful, man. Wonderful, wonderful poetry there. In the royal court, confusion was rampant. Sons were not heirs. Wives were not half-sisters. In the land, the suffering was increasing. Fields had no abundance. The plants wouldn't grow. And among the people, fertility was diminished. I mean, nobody was getting pregnant means nobody was being born, so their population was diminishing fast. In the palace, fertility was absent. Neither son nor daughter was brought forth. Of On's seed, 7 were the rulers. Then of his seed, the throne was dry. So On, which is funny because On is, if you know if you study the genealogical history of the Anunnaki, On was, the Anunnaki were the Anunnaki were the princes of, the one God, princes of the guy who he was the son, the forefathers. They were the forefathers of the one who was the first person that started the bloodline, and that was On. And so after 7 of On's bloodlines were the rulers, they no longer had one of On's bloodline in rule. Daru, a child at the palace gateway, was embraced as a son. Duru, in the end, was adopted. His name became Lama, meaning dryness. In the palace, the princes were very mad, and they were complaining to the council of counselors. In the end, Lama ascended the throne. Though not of On's seed, he was the 8th to reign. Now, it's very interesting. He sounds very much like a Akhenaten type character, In the councils of the learned to heal the breach, there were 2 suggestions. One was to use a metal to fix their atmosphere, a metal by the name of gold. On Nibiru, it was greatly rare. Within the hammered bracelet, it was abundant. So the zone, I guess, the hammered bracelet may be very well talking about the asteroid belt. It was the only substance that to the finest powder could be ground up and put in high into the heaven, into the atmosphere, and would stay suspended. Thus, with replenishments, the breach would heal and it would have better protection. Let the celestial boats be built. Let a celestial fleet fleet the gold to Nibiru bring over. So here they are. They're talking about let's create ships and go somewhere out, on the other side of our solar system and find some gold and bring it back here. Funny, that would just be the one thing our monetary system just happened to be based on, huh? Get us all to mine it, get us all to build our whole, fight and kill each other for, 3,500 years or 3,600 years or however long it is, and then create this power structure, then get everybody to hoard it in one spot. And then when the Anunnaki come back and tell us,
pathetic earthlings, bow down to me. We are the Anunnaki, and we have returned for our gold. We will take it back to our planet and leave you pathetic earthlings here on the planet to die.
Stranger things have happened. Probably what it's going to be, isn't it? Folks, you're going to have to get this gold right now, folks, because Anunnaki want to take the gold away from you, folks. Ted's got a great deal on Jugo for you today, and you need to get it now, because you don't have much time left, folks. The Anunnaki are going to take your gold, folks, and I'm fucking mad about it. Yeah, you'll probably hear that before it's over with. Let weapons of terror be created. Now, we've established from reading William Bramley and reading the rest of this that the weapons of terror they refer to are the nuclear weapons of mass destruction. So they're saying they should, go to this planet or wherever it is and just launch nuclear weapons and blow the shit out of stuff and go in and pick up all the gold. For a decision, Lama was too feeble. What did he know about making that kind of a choice? One orbit of Nibiru was completed. In the fields, affliction was not diminished. The volcanoes continued belching, and the atmosphere was still not repaired. A third shar passed. A shar is a year. in Nibiru. By the way, it's a marking of or a year or marking of a sort of passage of time. So when they say a third shar passed and a fourth shar passed, that's a notation of time. By the way, still the gold was not obtained in the land. There was still strife. Strife was abundant. There was no food, no water. Everybody in the lands were disjointed. Everybody was accusing each other. Everybody's running around like basically like a chicken with their head cut off, not knowing who to blame, playing the blame game. And there's basically saying, well, then if this is our destiny to die like this, then doing or we can't really do anything about it. In the royal court, the princes were astir. The king's accusations were directed foolishly, unreasoning, and greater calamities instead of a cure he brought forth. From the olden storehouses, weapons were retrieved. A rebellion, there was much speaking. A prince in the royal palace was the first to take up arms. And now they're having civil unrest. And they went up to Lama and attacked him. And they killed Lama, the eighth ruler. Lama is no more. The king is no more, with glee, he announced. To the throne room, Alalu rushed. On the throne, he himself seated. Without right or counsel, a king, he pronounced himself king. In the land, all unity was lost. Some rejoiced the death of Lama, some were saddened by it. Now, this is the account of the kingship of Alalu and of the going to earth. So when this guy, so what's essentially what they're telling us is that this guy Lama died, and this guy Alalu, who just wasn't anybody, basically came in and said, I'm not of the bloodline. I'm just a regular person. I'm taking over. And now that I'm taking over and I'm the new game in town, I'm saying that we're going to Earth and we're going to go get the gold there. So there was no talk of going to Earth and mining Earth. That's interesting. By the power structure of people that existed on the throne in Nibiru, there was no talk of even going to Earth to do this until this usurper came in and basically took over the throne by, sheer brute force. He came in, killed the king, took over and became king and said, we're going to Earth to get the gold to fix this problem. That's very interesting. This is why they say that the Anunnaki, the people that came to Earth and did the things that they did and created humans and all this stuff, were pursued from some of the other inhabitants of Nibiru. They were pursued by other Anunnaki. So that kind of clears that up a little bit, doesn't it? So it wasn't that we were even, invaded or genetically manipulated by people who were, of the royal bloodline. These were basically usurpers. We were. That's kind of an unbelievable thing. In the land, the unity was lost, and many people did not like the kingship of this guy Alalu just coming in and saying, "I'm taking over. I'm the new game in town." You can imagine that. Princes were agitated. The counselors were distraught. From father to son, secession from on to the throne continued. Even Lama the eighth, by adoption, a son was proclaimed. Who was Alalu? Was he a legal heir? Was he a firstborn? By what right did he usurp? Was he not a king slayer? Before the seven who judged, Alalu was summoned, his fate to consider. So they're bringing into him to be judged by seven people. Though through neither legal heir nor son of a firstborn royal seed, he was he. Of Angshargal I am descended, before the judges he claimed, by a concubine. My ancestor was born to him. Elam was his name. By the count of shars, by the count of years, Elam was the firstborn throne to belong to him. So basically, he came in and said, no, I can prove that I am part of this bloodline. So they couldn't really argue with that. The royal annals from the House of Records were brought forth. With much care, they were read on and onto the first royal couple. There were 3 sons and no daughters born to them. The firstborn was Anki. He died on the throne and had no offspring. The middle son in his stead was Anib, and Shargal was his firstborn, and to the throne he ascended after him. On the throne of kingship by the firstborn did not continue. So it didn't continue on that far. And this goes on and on and on. They're talking about blah, blah. Is he, they're trying to figure out, does he have the right to be king? Is he a usurper? This, that, and the other. Secession must be reconsidered to the assembly, he said. Through neither firstborn nor by the queen of a son of pure seed am I descended. The essence of On in me is preserved, by no concubine diluted. So he's saying, basically, yes, she had, On had, my father had sex with, a person who wasn't of the bloodline, but it didn't dilute it. I'm still part of he's trying to just convince these people that he is one of them through the bloodline so that he can, maintain power. They asked for his name. It is Anu. After my forefather, I named. Now, what's interesting about that? Wow. So this is the story of Anu. So the guy who took over and usurped the throne was Anu, and we know that Anu's sons later on were Enlil and Enki. So Enlil and Enki, who allegedly caused all this havoc on Earth, the flood and genetic manipulation and all this stuff, and seeding mankind with these phony religions, were the result of someone who may or may not have actually been a part of the royal bloodline. So if that's true, and these people that are in charge and power today, and presidents, kings, queens, power structure all over the world, that are part of this bloodline, and they're basing their whole divine right to rule on the fact that they're a part of these bloodlines, right? If that's true, then that would make them imposters. That would make them these, because from what this genealogical and historical record of the ancestors of the Anunnaki tells us, is that it wasn't the people who had been in the bloodlines and in the power structure and everything up to that point who made the decision to Earth. They seemed to act like that was taboo. Then this guy comes in, kills the king, takes over, and then goes through this big, long drawn out ordeal of being in front of the council and show, oh, look at me, and and I came from this bloodline, and my baby daddy was over here, and he fucked this whore, the concubine, and just because she's a whore doesn't mean I'm not a part of the bloodline. All this convincing going on, you see. So again, that would make this very, very interesting. That would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that these people that, oh, maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe that's why they've been creating space-based weapons. Maybe, they're scared, because if there's something to this, if this is real, then that would mean that at some point, the real bloodlines of power, if any of these people still exist anywhere, could actually feasibly come back and call out the power structure here on Earth as being the usurpers and the descendants of the usurper who took over the throne on Nibiru. They could very well come here and say, we need help fixing our atmosphere, but, they came down here and set this up and basically did it against our wishes. Boy, that could be, no wonder they don't want us knowing what this information is. My goodness, see, it just becomes more clear every time we read it. They asked him what his name was, and he said, my name is Anu, after my forefather I am named. They inquired about his generations. Of On's 3 sons, he reminded them. Anki was the firstborn. Without a son or daughter, he died. Anib was the middle son. Instead of Anki, to the throne he descended. Anib, the daughter of his younger brother, took to be wife. From them onward to the succession in the annals was recorded. Who was that younger brother? A son of On and Antu, that was of purest seed. The counselors looked with wonderment at each other. Inuru was his name. Anu to them announced that he was my great ancestor. His spouse, Ninuru, was a half-sister. Her son was firstborn. Inama was his name. And from the throneship, we were removed. From On's pure seed, we were not removed. So they basically, at some point, took out someone who had the right to be in power and tried to say that they weren't a part of the bloodline when they were. Okay. Though by different offsprings of one ancestor, we were both descended. Let us live in peace together and return abundance to Nibiru. Let me keep the throne. Let you keep the succession. Meaning, all right, well, let's do it like this. You let me stay in charge and have power and get some stuff done. And when I'm done and I'm old and I die, I'll pass it on to you. And then your bloodline can keep it going after that. Nice little compromise to keep everybody happy, huh? To the council words he directed, let Anu, the crown prince, be. Let him be my successor. Let his son, my daughter, espouse. Let succession be united. Anu bowed before the council, and to the assembly he declared, Alalu's cupbearer I shall be. His successor in waiting, a son of mine, a daughter of his as bride, I shall choose. That was the council's decision, and in the royal annals it was inscribed. In this manner, Alalu on the throne remained seated. He summoned the sages, the savants, and the commanders for him to consult in deciding that, and from that he gained much knowledge. Let celestial boats be constructed to seek the gold in the hammered bracelet, he decided. So again, he usurps the crown, takes over, convinces them, hey, you let me get in here and get some stuff done, and then I'll make sure when I'm done that, we'll still continue the bloodline thing and pass down the power. And so what is the first thing he decides to do? Let's build the celestial boats. Let's build the crafts. Let's go to the hammered bracelet, the area around the earth, and let's get the gold and bring it back here and fix our atmosphere. And their first try was essentially no good. By the hammered bracelets, the boats were crushed. None of them returned. Let the weapons of terror enter the bowels of Nibiru. Let Nibiru be cut open. Let the volcanoes again erupt, he then commanded. So this asshole tries to, build these ships to go and get the gold. It fails. They are destroyed, and then he gets pissed off and unleashes, weather weapons and says, let the volcanoes erupt, unleashes nuclear weapons. With weapons of terror, skyborne chariots were armed with terror missiles from the skies where the volcano struck. Oh, so he sent up the ships and launched nuclear weapons inside of the volcanoes of Nibiru. The mountains swayed, the valleys shuddered as great brilliances with thunder exploded. In the land, there was much rejoicing. Everybody was expecting there was going to be an abundance of food and things were going to get better. And it just continued to get worse. The volcanoes did not increase. The atmosphere did not heal. And it kept going around its orbit, and it kept getting colder and colder on Nibiru. Of rocks and boulders was it together hammered. Like orphans with no mother, they banded together, surging back and forth a bygone destiny they followed. Their doings were loathsome, troubling their ways. Nibiru's probing chariots like preying lions they devoured. So something basically, devoured these spaceships. the precious gold needed for surviving, they refused to dislodge. The chariot of Alalu toward the hammered bracelet was headlong moving. The ferocious builders in close combat to boldly face. So there's definitely a fight going on here. Alalu, the firestones in his chariot more strongly stirred up. That which shows the way, with steady hands he directed. The ominous boulders against the chariot charged forward like an enemy in battle attacking. Toward them, Alalu shot a death-dealing missile from his spaceship. That's literally what it says. This is towards them, Alalu, a death-dealing missile from the chariot let loose. So he shot a missile out of a spaceship. Then another and another against the enemy. The terror weapons he thrust. So he's shooting nukes. This is great. How come nobody's made a sci-fi movie out of this shit yet? Somebody will now that I've said it. Make billions of dollars, and I wish I would have done it. That always happens to me. As frightened warriors, the boulders turned back, a path for Alalu granting. Like by a spell, the hammered bracelet, a doorway to the king had opened. That sounds like a Stargate. So a Stargate opened. In the dark deepness, Alalu, the heavens, he could clearly see. By the bracelet's ferocity, he was not defeated. His mission was not ended. In the distance, the sun's fiery ball was sending forth its brilliance. Welcoming rays towards Alalu, it was emitting. Before it was a red-brown planet on its orbit. The sixth in count of celestial gods it was. Alalu could but glimpse it. On its destined course from Alalu's path, it was quickly moving. Then snow-hued earth appeared. The seventh in the celestial count. So he's getting, he blows up and blows this stuff out of the way, the people that are chasing him. And then, so they're chasing him from Nibiru. He shoots these nuclear weapons, blows them up, and starts making his way towards Earth, presumably to come down and seed us with culture and information and religion and to call himself a god and everything else. Toward the planet, Alalu set his course to a destination most inviting. Smaller than Nibiru was its alluring ball. Weaker than Nibiru was its attracting net, its gravity. Its atmosphere was thinner than Nibiru's, and its clouds were within it swirling. Below, the earth to three regions was divided: snow white at the top and on the bottom, blue and brown in between. Deftly, Alalu spread the chariot's arresting wings around the earth's ball to circle. Again, let's keep in mind this stuff came out of Sumerian clay tablets. You think these people could have just made up perfect descriptions of the earth? It just boggles my mind to people that say that this is hogwash or whatever. I mean, that's 5,000-year-old text. How can you explain that? In the middle region, dry lands and watery oceans he could discern. The beam that penetrates downward he directed, Earth's innards to detect. I have attained it, he ecstatically shouted. So right there he tells you he had a beam that he could shoot down to Earth and determine how much gold was there. That's high technology. I have attained it, ecstatically he shouted. Gold, much gold. The beam has indicated it was beneath the dark-hued region. In the waters it was, too. With pounding heart, Alalu's a decision was contemplating. Shall he, on the dry land, his chariot bring down, penchance to crash and die? Perchance to crash and die? So, will he land on land, or shall he land on the water and risk sinking? Which way shall he survive? Will he the treasured gold discover? In the eagle's seat, Alalu was not stirring. To fate's hands, the chariot he entrusted. Fully caught in Earth's attracting net, the chariot was moving faster. Its spread wings became aglow. Its spread wings became aglow. Was this motherfucker landing in a Klingon bird of prey or something? Jesus Christ. Is that where the fuck they got that at, too? Wouldn't surprise me. Von Braun's Nazis were in on the science advisory board on the original Star Trek series. Fact. It spread its spread wings became aglow. He's landing in a bird ship. A fucking Klingon bird of prey. Jesus Christ, the Anunnaki are Klingons. Great. No wonder they're dumbasses. Klingons are fucking dumb. Earth's atmosphere was like an oven. Well, yeah, you come in through the atmosphere, you start heating up, motherfucker. Guess you weren't smart enough to know that in advance, were you? I guess you didn't have a nifty little laser beam you could shoot down here to figure that out, now did you? Then the chariot shook, emitting a mortifying thunder. With abruptness, the chariot crashed, and with a suddenness altogether stopping. Senseless from the shaking and stunned by the crash, Alalu wasn't moving. Then he opened his eyes and knew he was among the living. At the planet of gold, he victoriously arrived. Now, this is the account of the earth and its gold. It is an account of the beginning and how the celestial gods were created. In the beginning, when in the above, the gods in the heavens had not been called into being. And in the below, Ki, the firm ground, had not yet been named. Alone in the void, there existed Apsu, the primordial begetter. In the heights of the above, the celestial gods had not yet been created. So, see, that's exactly. Celestial gods, the ones that were the hierarchy that was the bloodlines on Nibiru that we talked about earlier, that had that genealogical record. Those are the ones that became the gods. Above and below, the gods had not yet been formed. Destinies were not yet decreed. No reed had yet been formed. No marshland had appeared. Alone did Apsu reign in the void. Then by his winds the primordial waters were mingled. A divine and artful spell Apsu upon the waters cast. On the void's deep he poured a sound sleep. Tiamat, the mother of all, as a spouse for himself, he fashioned. A celestial mother, a watery beauty he was indeed. A watery beauty she was indeed. Now, Tiamat is said to be the mother of all, which is supposed to be this other planet that was once in our solar system that was a water planet that looked like a second sun from Earth because of the way the sun reflected off the water on the planet. Beside him, Apsu, little Mumu, then brought forth, as his messenger, him appointed, a gift for Tiamat to present. A gift resplendent to his spouse, Apsu granted, a shining metal, the everlasting gold, for her alone to possess. Then it was that the two, their waters mingled, their waters mingled, yeah. You know what it says when their waters mingled, right? Yeah, like Jesus turning the water into wine. And how Jesus turned the water into wine, he shot a fat load right in some girl's mouth. Divine children, yeah, really. That's what the water was. The magic water he told them to drink for. Yeah, man, it was semen. A bunch of semen worshipers. Male and female were the celestials created, Lamu and Lahamu by the names they were called. In the below did Apsu and Tiamat make them an abode. Before then they had grown in age and in stature, and the waters above Anshar and Kishar were formed. Surpassing their brothers in size they were. As a celestial couple, the two were fashioned. So hear what they're saying here. They're talking about forming these celestial. They're talking about. He's talking about forming moons and forming things like of that nature and planets. In order for life to be able to flourish on Earth, because if we didn't have a moon, we wouldn't, we wouldn't have any sort of tides or any ability for life to be created. A son, On, in the distant heavens was their heir. Then Onto to be his spouse, and as On's equal was brought forth, as a boundary of the upper waters, their abode was made. Thus were three heavenly couples, below and above in the depths, created by names that were called the family of Apsu. With Mumu and Tiamat they formed. At that time, Nibiru had not yet been seen. The earth was not yet called into being. Mingled were the heavenly waters by a hammered bracelet. They were not yet separated. At that time, circuits were not yet fully fashioned. Oh, so that okay. Well, that's interesting. That tells you right there. They're talking about forming planetary systems. I've talked about this and speculated about this for a long time. that I believe that at some point during one of these cataclysms, the Earth was re-terraformed. I think that's what these guys have been doing. They've been going around terraforming planets forever. And that's kind of what it's talking about here. I mean, that is what it's talking about here. I mean, it says at that time the circuits were not yet fully fashioned. Well, the circuits, we know they're referring to orbits. So that's an admission that they had the technology to be able to create orbits for particular planets. I mean, that's insane. Their celestial kinfolk banded together. Erratic were their ways. Their ways to Apsu were very loathsome. Tiamat, getting no rest, was aggravated and raged. A throng to march by her side she formed. A growing, raging host against the sons of Apsu she brought forth. With 11 of this kind she brought forth. She made the firstborn Kingu, chief among them. When the celestial gods of this herd did hear, for counsel they rallied. Kingu she has elevated to rank as on command to him she gave. A tablet of destiny to his chest she has attached, his own orbit to acquire. To battle against the gods of her offspring, Kingu she instructed. Who will stand up to Tiamat? The gods asked each other. Now this is crazy, because this is turning into this like sort of mythological story of these planets, you know, in our solar system battling each other. That's just bizarre. So who shall stand up to Tiamat? So let me guess. Somebody's going to defeat Tiamat. And then when they defeat Tiamat, that's what's going to cause the asteroid belt to form. It's going to cause all the water to rush to Earth. And then that's what they're going to refer to in the book of Genesis as the waters above the firmament, right? Let me guess. Watch, whatever happens, Tiamat's going to be defeated. And that's what that's symbolic of. None in their orbit stepped forward. None a weapon for battle would bear. At that time, in the heart of the deep, a god was engendered. In a chamber of fates, a place of destinies, he was born. By an artful creator was he fashioned. The son of his own son he was. From the deep where he was engendered, the god from his family in a rushing departed. A gift to his creator, the seed of life, he carried with him. To the void he set his course, a new destiny he was seeking. The first to glimpse the wandering celestial was the ever-watchful Antu. Alluring with his figure a radiance he was beaming. Lordly was his gait, G-A-I-T gait. Exceedingly great was his course. Of all the gods he was the loftiest, surpassing their orbit he was. The first to glimpse him was Antu. Her breast by child never sucked. Her breast by child never sucked. I bet there's an anagram in there, Alice. Come be my son, she called to him. Let me your mother become. She cast her net and made him welcome, and made his course for the purpose suited. Oh, whoa, nice orbit, pulling in something in the orbit there. Her words filled the newcomer's heart with pride. The one who would nurse him made him haughty. His head to double size grew larger. 4 members at his side he sprouted, and his lips, he moved his lips in acceptance. A godly fire from them blazed forth. See, this is talking about, you know, probably Jupiter forming. Toward Antu his course he turned, his face to An soon to show. When An or On saw him, my son, with exultation he shouted. To leadership you shall be consigned. A host by your side will be your servants. Let Nibiru be your name, as crossing forever known. He bowed to Nibiru, turning his face at Nibiru's passage. He spread his net for Nibiru. 4 servants he brought forth. So this is saying that the gods themselves are the planets, and the planets themselves are the gods. As in, they are conscious, and in each of the planets are actually living entities that are conscious. That would have unbelievable implications for our planet and all planets, wouldn't it? But that's what they're saying here. His host by his side to be the south wind, the north wind, the fast wind, and the west wind. With joyful heart on to Anshar, his forebearer, the arrival of Nibiru announced. Anshar, upon hearing this, Gaga, who was by his side as an emissary, sent forth words of wisdom to On to deliver to task Nibiru to assign. He charged Gaga, which I believe is Venus, to give voice to what was in his heart. To On thus say, Tiamat, she who bore us now detests us. She has set up a warring host. She is furious with rage. Against the gods, her children, 11 warriors, march by her side. Kingu among them she elevated. A destiny to his chest she attached without right. No god among us against her venom can stand up. Her host in all of us has established fear. Let Nibiru become our avenger. Let him vanquish Tiamat. Let him save our lives. For him to decree a fate, let him go forth and face our mighty foe. To On, Gaga departed. He bowed before him. The words of Anshar, he repeated. On to Nibiru's forebearers, words repeated. Gaga's message to him, he revealed. To the words, Nibiru with wonder listened. Of the mother who would her children devour, with fascination he heard. His heart, without saying, to set out against Tiamat, he had already prompted. He opened his mouth to On, and Gaga said, if indeed I am to vanquish Tiamat, to save your lives, then convene the gods to assembly and proclaim my destiny to be supreme. Let all the gods agree in council to make me the leader and bow to my command. When Lamu and Lahamu heard this, they cried out with anguish. Strange was the demand, its meaning cannot be fathomed. Thus they said, the gods who decree the fates with each other consulted. To make Nibiru their avenger, they all agreed. To him an exalted fate decreed. From this day on, unchallengeable shall be your commandments. To him they said, no one among us gods shall transgress your bounds. And we're about to pick up, it's about to get into the celestial battle. So I'm going to read this little bit and stop before it gets to the celestial battle. Go, Nibiru, be our avenger. They fashioned for him a princely circuit towards Tiamat, a orbit. They gave Nibiru blessings. They gave Nibiru awesome weapons. Anshar, 3 more winds of Nibiru brought forth, the evil wind, the whirlwind, and the matchless wind. Kishar, with a blazing flame, filled his body, a net to enfold Tiamat there within. Thus, ready for battle, Nibiru toward Tiamat directly set his course. So this is talking about this, the battle of the gods and the gods being planets and what led to that. So we know, as we already know, that Tiamat is going to be destroyed. That becomes the asteroid belt. The water comes rushing down to Earth, covering much of the land on Earth with water. It was already covered with a great deal of water, but that's where the rest of it came in. And that would lead us to the next timeline of them starting to use genetic manipulation and start to use mankind as a slave race. This is fascinating stuff. It's one thing to, already have an idea of this stuff being there, but man, oh man, it's totally different when you really start to look at it in this way. And I'm glad we're reading this. And I'm glad we're starting to get some information on some of these, anagrams and stuff too. Wild stuff there. Now, this is the account of the celestial battle. We had the lead up to that last night. So tonight we're going to actually have the battle and how the earth came to be and of Nibiru's destiny. The Lord went forth, his fated course he followed. Toward the raging Tiamat, he set his face, a spell with his lips he uttered. So this is interesting that these people, they seem to be, these gods are using spells and they're using magic. And Tiamat, of course, we know this is the battle of the planets, the account of the celestial battle, meaning the battle of the planets. And Enki talks about these planets being gods, which is funny. Yeah, somebody was talking about that email we got from some crack nut a few months ago saying, all the planets are Satan. Oh, my God.
Suck Satan's cock, bitch.
Oh, my goodness. And so again, this is bear in mind when we're talking about here in this segment that this is supposedly a planetary battle between gods, the planets themselves being gods and battling. And of course, we know what the outcome that's going to be: the destruction of Tiamat, which was allegedly this water planet that, when viewed from Earth, made it appear from Earth that there were two suns because it was a water planet, and the sun shining on it made it reflect, so it looked like a second sun. And supposedly, it was blown up. The pieces of it became the asteroid belt, and all the water came rushing down to Earth, causing the Great Deluge. And so this is essentially what this is going to be talking about right here. Toward the raging Tiamat, he had set his face, a spell with his lips he uttered. As a cloak for protection, he, the pulsar, and the emitter put on. Pulsar and emitter, so that's like, this sounds like high technology, doesn't it? I mean, again, you have to understand that this is talking about very, very advanced technology, advanced beyond what we even have right now in 2011, way, way beyond that. With a fearsome radiance, his head was crowned. On his right, he posted the smiter. On his left, the repeller he placed. These, some sort of laser weapons, it sounds like. This is just insane. The seven winds, his host of helpers, like a storm he sent forth. Toward the raging Tiamat he was rushing, clamoring for battle. The gods thronged about him, then from his path they departed. To scan Tiamat and her helpers alone he was advancing. The scheme of Kingu, her host commander, to conceive. When he saw vigilant Kingu, his vision became blurred. As he gazed upon in the direction of the monsters, he was distracted, and he got off course, and he was confused. Tiamat's band tightly encircled her. With terror they trembled. Tiamat gave a shudder to her roots, and a mighty roar she emitted. On Nibiru, she cast a spell and engulfed him with her charms. The issue between them was joined. The battle was unavoided. Face to face they came, Tiamat and Nibiru against each other. They were advancing. They approached for battle, and they pressed on for single combat, meaning one-on-one, man-on-man. The Lord spread his net to encompass her. He cast it. With fury, Tiamat cried out like one possessed. She lost her senses. The evil wind which had been behind him, Nibiru drove forward. In her face, he let it loose. I'm not trying to be sexually dirty or be vulgar here, but I mean, you know what that kind of, what that sounds like, right? He drove forward and let it loose in her face. I mean, I don't think it's very hard to figure that out. I mean, he shot a load. I mean, I don't know what else to say. She opened her mouth, the evil wind to swallow, but could not close her lips. Oh, I'm sorry. The evil wind charged her belly into her innards. It made its way. Yeah. I mean, this is totally what this is meaning. Okay. Wow. So this is the ejaculation of the gods into the mouths of the god. This is dirty, man. This is triple X. The FCC would have a major problem with this if this was on terrestrial radio. Nibiru drew forward.
Nibiru drove forward. In her face, he let it loose. She opened her mouth, the evil wind to swallow, but could not close her lips. The evil wind charged her belly. Into her innards it made its way. Her innards were howling. Her body was distended. Her mouth was wide open. Through the opening, Nibiru shot a brilliant arrow, a lightning most divine. It pierced her innards. Her belly it tore apart. It tore to her womb, and it split apart her heart. Oh, this is good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Satan likes to come in every now and again. Having thus subdued her, her life breath he extinguished. The lifeless body surveyed. Like a slaughtered carcass, Tiamat now was. Beside their lifeless mistress, her 11 helpers trembled with terror. In Nibiru's net they were captured, unable to flee. Kingu, who by Tiamat was made the host chief, was among them. The Lord put him into fetters. To his lifeless mistress he bound him. He wrestled from Kingu the tablets of destinies unright. Well, that would mean that. Oh, that would mean that he made Tiamat be in orbit. It didn't get destroyed. Oh, that's odd. That's kind of odd. Stamped it with his own seal and fastened the destiny to his own chest. The others of Tiamat's band, as captives he bound in his orbit, he ensnared them. So he's making them his planets by ensnaring them in his orbit. He trampled them underfoot and cut them up into pieces. He bound them all to his orbit. To turn around them, he made and to rotate backwards in course. So he made them have a reverse orbit. From the battle of Nibiru, then departed. To the gods who had appointed the victory to announce, he made a orbit around Apsu. To Kishar and Anshar, he journeyed ahead. Gaga came out to greet him as a herald to the others he journeyed. Beyond An and Antu, Nibiru, to the abode in the deep he proceeded. The fate of lifeless Tiamat and of Kingu he then considered. To Tiamat, whom he had subdued, the Lord Nibiru then returned. He made his way to her, paused to view her lifeless body, and to artfully divide the monster in his heart that was planning something. Then, as a muscle into two parts, he split her. Her chest from her lower parts he separated. Her inner channels he cut apart. Her golden veins he beheld with wonder. Trotting upon her hinder part, the Lord, her uppermost part completely severed. The north wind, his helper from his side, he summoned. To thrust away the severed head, the wind he commanded to the void, in the void to place it. Nibiru wind upon Tiamat, then hovered, sweeping upon her gushing waters. Nibiru shot a lightning. To north wind he gave a signal. In a brilliance was Tiamat's upper part to a region unknown carried. With her then bound, Kingu was also exiled. Of the severed part, a companion to be, the hinder part fate Nibiru then considered. As an everlasting trophy of the battle he wished it to be, a constant reminder in the heavens, the place of the battle to enshrine. With his mace, the hinder part, he smashed to bits and pieces, then strung them together as a band to form a hammered bracelet. So is that Saturn? Locking them together as a watchman. No, that's the asteroid belt. The hammered bracelet is the asteroid belt. Locking them together as a watchman, he stationed them, a firmament to divide the waters from the waters. Yeah, waters above the firmament. That's what they're talking about in the book of Genesis. The destruction of Tiamat. The upper waters above the firmament from the waters below it, he separated. Artful works Nibiru thus fashioned. The Lord then crossed the heavens to survey the regions. From Apsu's quarter to the abode of Gaga, he measured the dimensions. The edge of the deep Nibiru then examined towards his birthplace, he cast his gaze. He paused and hesitated then to the firmament, the place of the battle. Slowly he returned. Passing again to Apsu's region of the sun, missing his spouse that he thought about with remorse. He missed her because she was dead. He gazed upon Tiamat's wounded half. To her upper part he gave attention. The waters of life, her bounty from the wounds, were still pouring. Her golden veins, Apsu's rays were reflecting. The seed of life, his creator's legacy, Nibiru then remembered. When he trod on Tiamat, when he split her asunder, to her the seed he surely imparted. He addressed words to Apsu, to him saying, with your warming rays to the wounds give healing. Let the broken part new life be given in your family as a daughter to be. Let the waters to one place be gathered. Let firm land appear. This is when they're transferring the water to earth, folks. That's what this is. By firm land, let her be called Ki. Henceforth, her name to be. And Ki, before it was named earth, was called Ki, K-I. Apsu to the words of Nibiru gave heed. Let the earth join my family. Ki, firm land of the below. Let earth her name be henceforth. By her turning, let there be day and night. In the days my healing rays to her I shall provide. Let Kingo be a creature of the night to shine at night. I shall appoint him. So Kingu became the moon. Earth's companion, the moon forever to be. Which is just odd considering, our moon seems to be an artificial construct. I mean, it seems, it's doesn't orbit, it orbits us in a geosynchronous pattern like a satellite, not like an orbit of a moon. That's what's very odd about it. Nibiru the words of Apsu with satisfaction heard. He crossed the heavens and surveyed the regions. To the gods whom had elevated him, he granted permanent stations. Their circuits he destined that none shall transgress nor fall short of each other. He strengthened the heavenly locks, gates on both sides he established. An outermost abode he chose for himself beyond Gaga were its dimensions. The great circuit or the great orbit to be his destiny, he beseeched Apsu for him to decree. All of the gods spoke up from their stations. Let Nibiru's sovereignty be surpassing. Most radiant of the gods he is. Let him truly the son of the sun be. From his quarter, Apsu gave his blessing. Nibiru shall hold the crossing of heaven and earth. Crossing shall be his name. The gods shall cross over neither above nor below. He shall hold the central position. The shepherd of the gods he shall be. A shar, or a type of a way of measuring time. A shar shall be his orbit, that his destiny will forever be. Now, this is the account of how the olden times began, and of the era that in the annals of the golden era by the name it was known, and how from Nibiru to earth the missions went the missions to earth to obtain gold happened. The escape from Alalu from Nibiru was its beginning. With great understanding was Alalu endowed. Much knowledge he had learned. He learned much knowledge by his forefather Enshargul of the heavens and the orbits. Much knowledge was amassed. By Enshar was acknowledged, greatly augmented. Of that, Alalu made much learning with the sages he discoursed, savants, and commanders he consulted. Thus was the knowledge of the beginning ascertained that Alalu had learned. The gold in the hammered bracelet was the confirmation. The gold in the hammered bracelet of gold in Tiamat's upper half was the indication. At the planet of gold, Alalu victoriously arrived in a high chariot with thunder crashing. So, a loud spaceship comes crashing down. With a beam, he scanned the place, his whereabouts to discover. So, he there again, Alalu comes down in his ship, his UFO, scans a beam down, and then decides that where he's going to land. The same thing that he did before when he decided there was gold there. He shot a beam down. I mean, this is amazing stuff here. 5,000-year-old text talking about UFOs and shooting beams down. Crazy shit. High chariot on dry land descended. At the edge of extended marshes, it landed. He put on an eagle's helmet, and he put on a fish's suit. So he put on an eagle's helmet. That's funny. And a fish's. So he put on something where he could swim into the water. The chariot's hatch he opened. At the hatch, he stopped to wonder. Dark-hued was the ground. Blue-white were the skies. No sound there. No one to bid him welcome. Alone on an alien planet he stood, perchance from Nibiru forever exiled. To the ground himself he lowered. On the dark-hued soil he stepped. There were hills in the distance. Nearby, much vegetation there was. Ahead of him there were marshes. Into the marsh he stepped. By the water's coolness he shuddered. Back to the dry ground he stepped. Alone on an alien planet he stood. With thoughts he was possessed of his wife and his offspring, and with longing he remembered them. Was he forever exiled from Nibiru? Of that, again and again, he often wondered. To the chariot or the spaceship, the UFO, he soon returned with food and drink to be sustained. Then deep sleep overcame him, a very powerful slumber. How long he slept, he could not remember. What awakened him, he could not tell. A brightness there was outside, a brilliance on Nibiru unseen, the sun. A pole from the chariot he extended. With a tester it was equipped. It breathed the planet's air, compatibility it indicated. The chariot's hatch he opened. At the open hatch he took a breath. Another breath, then another. The air of Ki indeed was completely compatible with Nibiru's. Alalu clapped his hands, a song of joy he was singing. Without an eagle's helmet, without a fish's suit, to the ground himself he lowered. The brightness outside was blinding. The rays of the sun were overpowering. Into the chariot he returned, a mask for the eyes he donned. He went and got his ass some sunglasses. Good call. Glad you had those with you. Smart thinking. Always carry sunglasses when you go to an alien planet. Okay? Put that on the fucking board. Always carry fucking sunglasses when you go to an alien planet. Smart move. I'm glad we had some sensible people in our ancestry here. He picked up a weapon that he carried with him, and he picked up a handy sampler. What's a handy sampler? Got a little bit of everything in there. Oh, I got a gun. I got me a laser beam. I got me a tractor beam. I got all kinds of stuff in here, man. To the ground he himself lowered. On the dark-hued soil he stepped. He made his way towards the marshes. Dark green were the waters. By the marsh's edge there were pebbles. Alalu picked up a pebble and thrust it into the marsh. In the marsh, a moving his eyes glimpsed. The waters were filled with fishes. Into the marsh, the sampler he lowered and looked at the murky waters. For drinking the water, it was not fit. Alalu was greatly disappointed. He turned away from the marshes. In the direction of the hills he went. He made his way through the vegetation. Bushes gave way to trees. This place was like an orchard. The trees with fruits were laden with fruits. By their sweet smell, they enticed him, and Alalu picked a fruit and put it in his mouth. It was smelled very sweet and tasted very sweet, and he was greatly delighted. Away from the sun's rays, Alalu was walking toward the hills. He set his direction. Among the trees, a wetness under his feet, he sensed, a sign of close-by waters. In the direction of the wetness, he set his course. In the midst of the forest, there was a pond, a pool of silent waters. Into the pond, the sampler he lowered. For drinking, the water was good. Alalu laughed, and unstopping laughter seized him. The air was good. The water was fit for drinking. There was fruit. There were fishes. What more did he need, right? Well, let me go find something I can bang, and we'll be all set. You know, I got food. I got fucking water. I can breathe air. Now I need something to put my dick in. So, you know, that's pretty much where we're going next. Got to be. He's a man, right? He's got his food. He's got his shelter. What's he need next? He needs vagina. And boom, here you go. That's how the human race got here. The end. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Just kidding. Boom, that brings us up to date. That's how we got here. Some dude, you know, with a big ego crashed on an alien planet, found some food, found some shelter, found breathable air, found something to fuck, and bam. This is how life was created. I don't know, we'll just walk into a classroom and teach that, you know. All right, kids, here we go. We're going to learn about creation and evolution today. Here's how it happened. 5,000 years ago, an alien, drunk-ass, horny, egotistical alien crashed on Earth. He missed his wife and his kids. Mostly he missed his wife because he couldn't get any poontang. And, you know, he found some fucking fruits and berries and some water and some breathable air. I was like, this is badass. Now I got to get my dick wet. And that about brings us up to date, kids. We'll have a quiz on this on Friday. Be sure and tell your parents what we learned today, okay? You guys be safe. Thanks. So, yeah, this guy's like, you know, living it up. Now I got to go. I just need to find something to have sex with. The daughters of man That's what he's going to have sex with. Yes. With eagerness, Alalu bent down. Together, he cupped his hands and put the water in his mouth. It had a different taste from the water of Nibiru. Once more, he drank, and then with fright, he jumped. A hissing sound he could hear. A slithering body by the poolside. That was a fucking snake, dude. We got snakes down here on this planet. All that technology and laser beams and, you know, shooting beams down to see where the gold is and shooting beams down to see where the optimum landing spot is. All that fucking technology couldn't save you from a fucking water snake. Now, could it? I mean, you know, that really, it's funny because that's what, you know, that sort of seems like what the elite do, what the New World Order does. It's that kind of shit, you know? You guys can pull off all these operations, but you get a fucking brain between you. It's just, didn't count on that fucking snake, did you, Bubba? He seized the weapon that he carried and blasted it away. Oh, you pussy. Shot the snake with a fucking laser beam. The moving stopped. The hissing was ended. To examine the danger, Alalu stepped forward. The slithered body lay still. Dead was the creature, a sight most strange, like a rope its long body was, without hands or feet. Fierce eyes were in its small head. Out of its mouth, a long tongue was sticking. Fucking snake, dude. A sight on Nibiru never beheld it was, a creature of another world. Was it the orchid's guardian? Alalu by himself pondered. Was it the water's master himself, he asked. In his carried flask, he collected some water and made his way back to his flying saucer. The sweet fruits he also picked and took them back to the flying saucer as well. The brightness of the sun's rays were greatly diminished. Darkness it was. So he crashed out in the UFO. The shortness of the day, Alalu pondered. Its shortness amazed him. So not used to our orbit, so the days are much shorter. So you age a lot quicker. From the direction of the marshes, a cool lightness on the horizon was rising. A white-hued ball in the heavens was rising. Kingu, the Earth's companion, he now beheld. What in the accounts of the beginning his eyes, the truth could now see? The planets and their orbits, the hammered bracelet, Ki, the Earth, Kingu, its moon, were all created, all by names that were called. In his heart, Alalu knew one more truth that needed beholding. The gold, the means of their salvation, needed to be found. If truth be in the beginning tales, if by the waters the golden veins of Tiamat were washed, in the waters of Ki, its cut off half, gold must be found. So essentially now I understand what they were saying. Earth, Ki, was actually a part of Tiamat that was cut off from. Very interesting. That's not really what you hear oftentimes in the research community and stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. With hands unsteady, Alalu, the tester, dismantled the chariot's pole. With trembling hands, he donned the fish suit. The fast arriving daylight eagerly awaited him. He left the chariot, the UFO, at daybreak and quickly stepped into the marshes. Into the deeper waters he waded. Into the tester, into the waters he inserted. Its illuminated face he eagerly watched. In his chest, his heart was pounding. I mean, it's funny. Its illuminated face literally is describing this, device having a screen on it. You're gonna sit here and tell me some guy 5,000 years ago in Samaria just made that up? I mean, if you don't believe anything else, I mean, the idea that he's, looking at an illuminated face of this tester, wondering what it's going to tell him. I mean, that's a screen. How did that guy, a scribe, know to describe a fucking LCD screen or a display screen 5,000 years ago? I mean, that question alone, out of all of this, should have everybody in the scientific community wondering what's going on here. Its illuminated face he eagerly watched. In his chest, his heart was pounding. The water's contents was indicated by the tester, by symbols and numbers, its findings disclosed. So right there, he's looking at a screen. Then Alalu's heartbeat stopped. There is gold in the waters. the tester was telling him. Unsteady on his legs, Alalu stepped forward deeper into the marsh as he made his way. Again, the tester into the waters he inserted, and again, the tester announced that he had found gold. A cry of triumph from Alalu's throat emanated. Nibiru's fate in his hands was now in his hands. He made his way back to the UFO. He took off the fish suit and occupied the commander's seat. The tablets of destinies that knows all orbits he enlivened to Nibiru's orbit to find the direction. The speaker of words he stirred up toward Nibiru the words to carry. Then to Nibiru words he uttered. Thus he was saying, the words of the great Alalu to Anu on Nibiru are directed. On another world am I. The gold of salvation I have found. The fate of Nibiru is in my hands. To my conditions you must give heed. So right there, he's basically blackmailing them. He's saying, you know, I found it. I found the gold. I found what can save our planet. How badly do you want it? Because if you want me to come back and save our planet, then you're going to have to, you know, when I come back and bring it, I'm king and I get to be in charge. And, you know, because, hey, I'm the one doing the hard work, all the work, right? So that's the end of the second tablet of the Lost Book of Enki. And tomorrow on the show, we'll get into the third tablet. Well, the synopsis of the third tablet, which is coming up next. And then obviously the third tablet after that. So I guess next we're going to be getting into him finding, you know, the daughters of man and getting his groove on and doing a little, you know, genetic crossbreeding to create slaves to hunt, to mine the gold. Fascinating stuff here. Lost Book of Enki. Again, you know, I don't always read everything that I read, and all this stuff I always agree with. I'm not reading this because I endorse it or I agree with it. I'm just reading it because it's highly interesting, and we are, I think, by reading it like this and sort of dissecting it and going through it day by day and page by page, I think it gives us all, myself included, you, more of an opportunity for us to decide for ourselves what's bullshit and what's not, instead of somebody just telling us, oh, you know, Zachariah Sitchin, he's, you know, CIA, and yeah, he was, blah, blah, whatever, but still, let's decide that for ourselves. Let's go through this. Let's see if we can get anything out of it. We'll call what's bullshit, and we'll take the rest and go about our own merry way. We don't have to fucking buy into anything or support, you know, this clown or his ideology, what he stood for, or anything else, but the fact of the matter is the reason why we've been told not to look at this is because this is indeed what mankind is supposed to know, so we don't repeat those same vicious cycles. And with the knowledge of this stuff, mankind would know that this happened in the past and this is where we're heading, and we would pull ourselves out of that before we had a chance. That's why they will not let us have this info. And that, again, is why the whole, you know, operation of the phony controlled patriot movement, truth movement was set up. Because they knew when people started looking forward towards conspiratorial topics, they'd eventually get into this stuff. But that's why you hear Alex Jones, oh, folks, that stuff's a distraction. Talk about the bankers, folks. Just quacking it up, running block, being the cock block for the priest class. Keep on doing it, Bubba. You know, people are awake now. A lot more people have figured this out. And that, to me, like I talked about last night, that's the fight. You know, that's what we got to do. We got to continue to try to get this information out to people and let them know that what these elite and these priest class bozos are hiding at the very top is they're hiding our birthright. They're hiding our information. They're you know, giving us these phony things like, you know, the phony state of Israel and, you know, telling us that these people over here are the Semites when it's not actually them, and they're going and killing the other people that are actually the bloodline descendants of these ancient civilizations. I mean, it's just insane. But it's all happening because of our sheer lack of knowledge of things that we've never been allowed to know. If we had a history of what had happened on other planets where possibly our forebears came from, and that they had gone down the same route we did, we might see that and go, oh, man, they fucked up. We don't want to go that route. We got to change things. If we were to do that, there'd be no more New World Order. There'd be no more power structure. So you see, this is why this is important. That's why I implore you to look at this information and, as usual, decide about it for yourself.